Hello, and thank you so much for tuning into my podcast. My name is Kara, and I'm a holistic health practitioner for both people and pets. After working for years in the conventional medicine field, I realized that while our lifespans may be getting longer, our health spans are rapidly shrinking. And when it comes to our pets, both their length and quality of life are decreasing. When I turned to functional medicine and a more holistic approach to health, I saw dramatic improvements for my pets, myself, and my patients. Join me each week as I merge natural health for people and pets by focusing on the root cause of disease and applying raw, real remedies that you can use to improve overall wellness for every member of your family, including the furry ones. Welcome to this week's episode. Before we start, I want to share with you an opportunity that will only be available for the month of March. My course, entitled Back to the Basics, Transition Your Dog to Fresh Food, is being transformed to a self-paced course rather than a live 4-week class. Because the format is new, I'm offering this course for free for the month of March. There will be 4 videos, each about an hour long. Lesson 1 discusses macronutrients, the role of carbs, and I talk about my pet's own journey with fresh food. Lesson 2 is about micronutrients and dissects vitamin and mineral deficiencies most commonly found in homemade diets. Lesson 3 dives deep into balancing over time, fresh feeding models, and the importance of variety. In this lesson, you'll learn about my newly published Vital Pause feeding model, and I'll show you how to use my calculator, which is the first ever calculator to offer options for cooked diets. And lastly, Lesson 4 includes meal prep tips, monitoring your dog after switching to fresh, and tips and tricks for tackling common issues that pet parents might experience in the fresh food realm. In April, I'll host a live Zoom Q&A for anyone who's taken the course. All I ask for in return is for you to share a testimonial on your social media and write a Google review once you've completed the course. If you're interested in taking the course for free during the month of March, go to www.rawpawventures.com and click on the Courses tab. There is also a link in the show notes, or you can directly email rawpawventures@gmail.com and ask to be signed up. I hope to see you there, and now let's jump into this week's podcast episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Raw Remedies. I'm super excited for today's episode. I have Mark McAfee here, and he is the CEO and founder of Raw Farm, which was originally established in 1998 and is the leading California and national brand of truly raw dairy products, including milk, butter, cream, kefir, or kefir, however you say it, and cheddar cheese, all of which I have in my house as often as possible. Mark is also the founder and chairman of the board at Raw Milk Institute, which is a nonprofit, and he's an internationally recognized speaker and expert with an emphasis on raw milk production standards, gut microbiome, milk genomics, nutritional benefits, raw milk food safety, you name it, he's talking about it. He's written countless articles, he's been on podcasts, TV stations, radio shows, and he's been featured in many food documentaries, which you can find on Netflix. And aside from his work in the raw milk and advocacy industry, like that doesn't keep him busy enough, Mark has also worked as a paramedic early in his career, and he's a skilled pilot. Welcome, Mark. How do you even have time for me today?
Wow. Listening to you, I was like, whoa, who is that guy? Yeah. Thank you for having me on, and I really appreciate being interviewed by a nurse practitioner. I think that's really, really important to have somebody who's a fellow healer, right? Somebody who's looking for the truth to make people well. And I think that's where the intersection of talking about this is so important.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey for me. It took a hot minute for me to get here. I worked in conventional medicine it's actually this year will be a decade, 12 years. Wow. And I was totally conventional until my dog, my first ever dog, had chronic pancreatitis. And I went through all the conventional steps and treatments and worked with a vet, and I tried the prescription this and nothing worked. And it wasn't until I took a step back and kind of dove deep into the dark pits of the internet and tried feeding him food, human grade food, instead of feed grade crap, that his problems went away. And that was when the door opened, or almost the veil lifted, and I went, oh my God, everything that I have learned is wrong. It's just not the right path. So I turned to a holistic path for pets, functional medicine for people, and now here I am trying to bring that information to others.
Wonderful. We all take our paths to get here, but I think that if you have an open mind and an open heart, you will seek the truth, and the science is there. And Mother Nature's blueprints really point the way.
So tell us about your path, because kind of similar to me, right? I started out in conventional medicine. You were a paramedic. So how did that lead you here?
Well, I grew up on a farm, dairy when I was a child, but first job out of high school after doing a bunch of cool stuff in high school with track and international travel and doing some interesting. First job out of high school was I was a commercial welder. And I was up in a mine in the mountains here and in the Sierra Nevadas at Teledyne Tungsten Mine. I saw a guy almost get killed. Big timber hit him in the head. And the paramedics flew in with a nurse and a helicopter. And the rotor wash just really got me excited. I just thought, this is too exciting. I have to get on the helicopter. So I made some money up there, went to school, got my pre-med taken care of, and then I went to paramedic school, EMT1, EMT2, and EMTP, mobile intensive care paramedic school. And I graduated top of my class, valedictorian. I loved it, and I enjoyed it, and I immersed myself in it. And for 16 years, I ran 15,000 paramedic calls. I taught paramedic medicine at the health department. I was operations manager. I was an HR recruiter. I was a preceptor. I was on a rescue team. I was on the helicopter. All those things. But I saw humanity. I saw humanity in its most dreary, ugly, obese, diabetic, seizures, shootings, stabbings, mental illness. You name it, I saw it at least 5 times at 2 o'clock in the morning. Delivered 26 babies, CPR, you name it, we did it. So that gave me an exposure to humanity, just like you did in the ER. And the bottom line is, when you see that, it gets real to you. It gets real. You've got scars, you've got emotion, you've got passion, you've got a spiritual sense that other people are suffering. And so in 1996, I retired from that thing, cold turkey, and took over the family farming operations. I said, I need to get some sleep. This is crazy. So after that episode of my life closed, my wife and I decided to take over the family farms, my grandparents who had passed away, and we wanted to produce foods that serve people, not processors. That was a genius, heartfelt determination and pathway in my life, which was fantastic. It was hard, but it was fantastic. And by 1998, 1999, we had established a small dairy, and we had a contract with Organic Valley. And it didn't last very long because we got calls from Los Angeles saying, we don't have any raw milk down here. The big Altadena brand had just closed. It just sold to Dean's Foods. And the Stuvey's brothers, who ran Altadena, were retiring and taking their millions of dollars from all this land they'd sold from their mini dairies in LA that was being sold for real estate, right? Millions of dollars. So they retired very wealthy people, but they left their consumers without raw milk. So I went to LA and took half gallons of raw milk down to a place called The Garage in Venice Beach, a place called Garage run by James Stewart. And as I arrived, the single most determinant thing that happened in my life occurred. My wife and I pulled in with our Suburban with all this milk in the car in ice chests. And we simply said to ourselves, what is going on here? There were hundreds of people in this alleyway, and they were all cheering. And they opened up the back of the Suburban, and they started taking milk out and throwing $10 and $20 bills in the car, saying, come back tomorrow, you're all out. So after talking with these people and understanding that they couldn't drink pasteurized milk, they had all kinds of allergies to it. It was just hard to digest, lactose intolerance. It didn't taste good, and they missed their raw milk. I became an immediate student of raw milk at that point, and I engaged my entire pre-med training, my wife's training as a nurse in lactation, and all these things came together. And I've emerged now after 25 years of doing raw milk as an expert in this, because I attend the International Milk Genomics Consortium conferences every year, and the only farmer in the room, along with all these PhDs. And so that's the path that got me here in a very short segment of how I embrace raw milk, and have trained over 1,000 farmers internationally and nationally on how to produce raw milk specifically for human consumption, not for pasteurization. And that is a key point. The standards we use are not the same as intended for pasteurization. Absolutely critical, which if you talk about that, you really address the issues that the FDA has, because they will not accept what we're talking about. They have one standard, dirty milk for pasteurization. We have another standard, clean milk for people. So that's the beginning of my story.
That's amazing. So, I mean, that really just kind of sets you up to dive right into the benefits, and also what is this kind of war on raw milk. I mean, why is there such a stigma and negativity surrounding these products, which are natural and have been around forever, right? Long before pasteurization. I know a little, but I won't claim to be an expert. Please tell me.
Well, to give a context to why the FDA is right and completely wrong at the same time, let's go back to the beginning of what defines us as mammals. What do we do that makes us different than other animals? What makes us different than birds? We lactate. We nurse our young. We are mammals. Okay? So raw milk defines us as humans, as well as goats, sheep, horses, camels, reindeer, all the other mammals, dolphins. So we all nurse our young. So interesting to note that that's been going on for hundreds of thousands of years. Pick your number, back a million years. 14,000 years ago, plus or minus a few thousand, we haven't figured that one out yet, mankind was spending a lot of time starving to death. And we were hunting, we were fishing, we were farming, we were doing all these things, gathering, trying to not starve. And we recognized, at least the archaeologists tell us that we recognized, that that animal out there is nursing on that other animal, and, well, we could go in there and rob some of that, domesticate that animal, and take that milk for ourselves. And so by domesticating other mammals, we were able to make a portable food source. If we had sunshine and grass, we had food today. We didn't have to starve, farm, hunt, fish. We had food today. So many cultures around the world started domesticating other mammals. Reindeer, horses, goats, sheep, camels, you name it. A lot of different kinds of domestication going on. And they had a decisive advantage because they had a whole food nutrition which had the blueprints of life in it. It had all the bioactives. And I'll say the bioactives many times on this show today because bioactives are not something that the FDA wants to talk about. But the bioactives are critical to what makes raw milk such a healthy food. And all of them are changed or destroyed in pasteurization and homogenization. All of them. So this is not my words. These come from Cornell University, funded by the National Dairy Council. In 2021, a big study came out. The bioactives found in unprocessed milk. And the thing goes on and on and on. And it's PubMed. And it talks about all these bioactive components in raw milk, in breast milk, that bring all these incredible health-giving benefits. Anti-inflammatory, antihypertensive, remineralization, anti-tumor, anti-cancer, and on and on and on. Antivirus. Wow. So
yeah.
We have appreciated as human beings for 10,000, 12, 14,000 years these wonderful bioactives in our body that have helped us have achieve and prevent disease and keep chronic inflammation in check and all these kinds of things, along with other whole food nutrition, not just raw milk, but other whole food nutrition. That said, come up to 1893, about 130 years ago. All around the world, people were bringing their cows into the city.
The filthy city with, no sanitation, where people were dumping buckets of urine out the second-story window. Yeah, that's a great place for raw products.
A terrible place, because out in the countryside in 1893, Dr. Henry Coit was certifying dairies to be under the AAMMC, the American Association of Medical Milk Commissions, for clean raw milk, because he loved raw milk. It was wonderful stuff, but he said you can't have it in downtown brewery dairies. They're feeding the cows brewers, distillers grains, no grass, no pasture, no clean water, filth everywhere, manure everywhere, and just to put an edge on this to really make people go yuck. If it was cold in the morning, the people that just got off of Ellis Island that had tuberculosis themselves were milking the cows by hand in open buckets and putting their feet in the milk because it was warm. That's the kind of milk was killing 30 to 40% of the people that drank it. It was considered the milk problem. Nathan Strauss brought in the parboiler, which is the early form of pasteurization, which was nothing more than just a big bucket that you put over a fire, you put your milk in there, and you cook the heck out of it. And what do you know? Fewer people died. True. It killed all the bacteria. That's absolutely true. So still people died because the water quality was so bad, but nonetheless it was better. And he was heralded as a hero after a few years because all this cheap, disgusting milk could be consumed and people didn't die. And so that was the early industrialization of dirty milk. Now, to quote Dr. Bruce German, who's a mentor of mine at UC Davis, International Milk Genomics Consortium, he's a professor there, he said, pasteurization is an 18th century solution to an 18th century problem. We could do a whole lot better. And that's exactly what I do, a whole lot better. But the AAMMC was established by Dr. Henry Coit in 1893. Altadena Dairy, that dairy we talked about, was the last certified dairy from the AAMMC. So it lasted 106 years. And that milk had an impeccable clean record of sanitation and illness. And it was going to the Mayo Clinic. It was on the Titanic. It was consumed by presidents in the White House. So that milk was expensive. It was hard to find and get because it was rare. But you saw the pasteurization took over because it was so much easier to get cheap milk from a farmer and not worry about sanitation and just cook the heck out of it. So you see what won was pasteurization because it was cheap and easy, but it also had all kinds of problems. It was missing its bioactives. It's highly allergenic. It's hard to digest. Doesn't taste very good. And we're seeing this ever declining consumption of pasteurized milk over the last 50 years because of that. But now we see an explosion of interest in raw milk that are produced under very specific standards, which are very clean, and we can go into that a little bit, that allows people to embrace and appreciate raw milk that's sanitary, that has all the bioactives there, that comes from a known source, cows on pasture, and all the things we like about cows in sunshine, that bring on all these fantastic health virtues that we've been missing. So it has a very, very important role in terms of going forward with health and prevention. And I'll note one more thing that's really critical here. Think about this for a second. A baby is born to a mother, slips out of the birth canal if they're lucky. 30% of the time they're born by C-section, but naturally born through the birth canal. And they're just covered in liquid, right? From all mom's bodily juices, which are heavily populated by bifidobacteria, by the way. Those bacteria are on the mouth and on the baby. The baby goes to the mother's breast, suckles on colostrum from the mom's circulatory system that's rich in fats, as well as lots of antibodies and blood components that immediately goes in and coats the gut of the child. Just does not have a gastrointestinal microbiome developed yet. Just the rudimentary tube with tissues, that's it. And now you've got all this fantastic transfer between mom to baby because you don't have an umbilical cord anymore, and mom wasn't sharing her blood with the baby anyway. So the bottom line is this is the first transfer of unique properties from mom to baby after birth. And then a day or two later, lactation begins, the lacteal gland starts secreting milk, baby suckles on the breast, and all that milk then nourishes the inoculum, the culture transfer that happened from mom to baby. Wow! Raw milk, what's its foundational property? What's it do? What's its purpose? To start an immune system, nourish an immune system, direct an immune system, and protect a baby when nothing else can. So it is directs, protects, and nourishes a baby in its most risky, most threatened time of life at birth. And the babies thrive as a result of that. So post-COVID, think about it for a second. People are going, wait a minute, the doctors say they can't help us, stay at home, take some vitamin D, maybe. We don't have a vaccination for you yet. If you're immune compromised, you might die. People say, wait a minute, I don't want to be immune compromised. What can I do to build the immune system? And they get smart saying, well, the first food of life builds an immune system that did not exist before birth. Which shouldn't we be drinking some of that right now? Because that will help our gut microbiome, which is 80% of your immune system anyway. So there's a lot of things coming together here that are very powerful. But I'll tell you what, that's the history of raw milk in terms of 1 million years ago, through 14,000 years ago, through Christ himself. When you think about the land of milk and honey, that was not pasteurized, through the Romans, through the Dark Ages, all the way through the 1800s, and our first settlers in Jamestown. If you didn't have a musket, a cow, you died or went back to Europe. You had to have a cow to survive. So to today, where we have this immune compromised situation, the gut microbiome carnage with chronic inflammation, with all these pharmaceutical solutions that just turn off the warning lights when the engine blows up. So this is where we are today. And because of people like you that are doing the research and saying, hey, dear patient, you have chronic chronic inflammation, you need to be on a whole food diet with bone broths and avocados and olive oil and raw milk kefir, and you will recover without getting an ileostomy from your Crohn's disease. So this is where we are today.
And it's crazy when you put the numbers into perspective. How is it possible that thousands and thousands of years could go by and people were using this? And, I like to think of it as a kind of a mutually beneficial relationship. We give you, this ruminant, shelter, like a safe area to graze in. We're going to protect you from predators. In return, we want just some of you. We won't take it all. Keep some for you, baby. Right? But we'll have some of that. We'll take some of those benefits. Mutually beneficial. And then all of a sudden, after thousands of years of proving that this is helpful and beneficial, it's demonized. And we say, oh God, no, you can't do this. It'll kill 30% of us. Well, I don't think we would have made it that far if that was the case. So yeah, I know that industrialization and kind of bringing these ruminants into an area that is dirty and not species appropriate, changing their diet, which is no longer species appropriate, that has a trickle down effect. What you said about immunocompromise and all of these chronic diseases, I mean, it is exploding, Mark. Breast cancer in women, I mean, immune diseases, it is just terrible. It's everywhere you look now. Almost 80% of the population is diabetic or pre-diabetic, and it's all coming from these ultra-processed foods and these ultra-processing processes. And unfortunately, that is what pasteurization is it's processing. Now that I know, I never want to drink pasteurized milk again because I'm not really getting any benefits from it. And if anything, it could cause a problem because raw milk, I'll let you talk about the benefits, but one thing I know is that certain enzymes that are in the raw milk help you break down the lactose that is also in the milk. And so people that are lactose intolerant can still tolerate raw milk, but then if you give them a glass of pasteurized milk, they're going to have bloating and be miserable. And allergies is another thing. So I was actually just listening to a podcast episode, and I was so excited when I saw the name of this podcast episode about raw milk. And it was on a podcast that I like, and I feel like they tend to share somewhat balanced views of things instead of being biased. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to listen to this. The episode opens, and they started out with a disclaimer that they don't recommend giving raw milk because of the risk of like bacteria and getting sick and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, I was ready to turn it off, but I kept going. I pushed through the warning. And then they start talking about the statistics. And they started sharing statistics that children who either live on farms, drink raw milk from that farm, or live in the surrounding suburban area, so not on the farm, but receive raw milk from that farm,
Correct.
had a significantly lower incidence of developing allergies than children who drank pasteurized milk.
It goes beyond that. They also had decreased asthma, ear infections, fever, and colds. Ear infections, fevers, and colds. The bioactives are playing a huge role here. Mast cell, the whey protein stabilizes mast cells. Histamines flow from mast cells. So if histamines aren't released, then it doesn't trigger the allergy. So this whole cytokine storm thing that happens in people post-allergy is restricted, is controlled, is prevented because these bioactives found in raw milk really do an excellent job of controlling that whole inflammation response. The alkaline phosphatase enzyme. Alkaline phosphatase enzyme is a very important enzyme. Some people are highly deficient in that enzyme. It's very anti-inflammatory. A big study done in Europe by J.P. Lals many years ago in 2014 found that the cheeses made in France that were raw, truly raw, never heated, people were eating like 2 kilos a week of cheese that's truly raw. That they thought that maybe the French paradox was more driven by the alkaline phosphatase enzyme from the raw cheeses than the wine, because they were thinking about, the whole inflammation response with wine. But bottom line is, there are elements found in raw milk before processing that are critical to your health. And they have been for a long, long time. And I'll tell you, the whole pasteurization intolerance thing, lactose intolerance as we call it, I had a friend, his name's Kamele, and he grew up in Kenya. He was a Maasai warrior, athlete, proud guy, Maasai warrior. He grew up from 3 years old. He sucked directly from the teat of a cow, or he said he would have starved. And he drank raw milk. Very healthy guy, perfect teeth, gorgeous. he came to America and he went to school at Stanford with Kelsey Clinton. And during that period when he was here, he was very ignorant about nutrition. And he started drinking pasteurized milk, and it made him sick. He couldn't drink it. So he started drinking soy milk. Well, within a couple of years, he actually ended up with a case of Crohn's disease. A Maasai warrior with Crohn's disease is unheard of in the world. It doesn't happen. So here he is at Stanford University, and Dr. Chris Gardner, his professor at nutrition, says, you better go down to the clinic and figure out what's going on because your gut's on fire, because he's going to the bathroom all day long. Went down there. He said, we're going to have to remove some of your intestines because you've got Crohn's disease. And he goes, no way, not happening. I got to know him through a movie maker way long ago. And we sat down and I offered him some raw milk. I said, would you like to have some raw milk like you had back in Maasai, in Kenya? He goes, sure. But he didn't trust me. He was very hesitant as he was going to consume this milk because he didn't really trust that it was actually raw. But he consumed the milk and he goes, oh my God, this is like back home. Oh my God. Well, I gave him 8 gallons of milk for every week for 2 years for free. He got rid of his Crohn's disease. He basically survived on milk alone. He got rid of his Crohn's disease in 6 months, 7 months. He had no more signs or symptoms whatsoever from his Crohn's disease. And it's interesting. His quote to me was, I may live in California, but I eat in Kenya. So it is truly true that America has a pharmaceutical or a surgical solution for everything that makes a lot of money. A lot of money. But it causes a lot of pain and it's totally unsustainable. When I proposed the solution of the bioactives in raw milk and raw milk kefir and avocados and olive oil and bone broths and all those wonderful curative things to doctors that are gut experts, they deny, saying, no, there is no cure, surgeries, drugs. That's a reflection of their training and also kind of a reflection of their whole business model, which reflects this continuing education they get before they go to get more pharmaceutical training. So fundamentally, we have a medical school error, an omission, where we fail to train physicians on how to heal people and prevent disease. And instead, we have physicians that are treating people for chronic disease and making a lot of money and also bankrupting our country and causing pain to our citizens. So we have a ethical, moral obligation to stand up for this purpose and say, listen, wait, stop the train here, and let's have safe, delicious raw milk and other whole foods that we consume that prevent disease. And that is an obligation I take very, very highly in my heart.
I think that's such an amazing mission, and to just, you're clearly so passionate and driven, and if more people were like that, I think that we would have a lot more change a lot more quickly in this world. And so one of the people that I'm sure you can think of, and me as well, that is a huge advocate and has been battling the masses, lots of slander, because as soon as somebody steps up and starts talking about something controversial, you know that the media is going to try and shut them down. But RFK is a huge advocate for raw milk, and he is really trying to make waves about health and returning to health in this country. And the things that he's saying really resonate and hit home with me because it's what I have learned as well through my own experience. And so I know that his previous running mate, Nicole Shanahan, you mentioned she was recently at one of your farms in California and had filmed a podcast and kind of a mini documentary. Can you tell me about that? And also, please tell us where people can find that so that they can watch and listen.
Well, you can just Google Mark McAfee, Nicole Shanahan, raw milk, and it'll come right up.
Awesome.
It's a YouTube. I think it's YouTube. Anyway, it's there. You can look for Shanahan, raw milk, Mark McAfee, raw milk. It's there. She reached out to me because she's one of our customers. She buys our raw milk in Los Angeles from one of the raw milk stores at Sprouts and Erewhon and all the stores in LA that sell our raw milk. We have 500 stores in California sell our raw milk. It's a top selling product in the stores, growing at 1% per week. 1% per week. That's 50% a year. So she reached out because she knew RFK told her, get a hold of Mark McAfee and recruit him to help us, because if he was going to be elected president, he wanted everybody to have access to the kind of milk we get here in California from local farmers that were well-trained with high standards wherever they are across America. So at that point, in June of 2024, she recruited me, asked me if I could be a part of their team to bring raw milk to all people in America that so chose to consume it. And I said, absolutely, that would be a life dream for me at 63 years old. After doing this for 26 years and battling the FDA, I think nothing more constructively can be done than actually go to the top and educate them about the other standard. Not the raw milk intended for pasteurization. That should be pasteurized, and I support that. That's the true statement from the FDA. But the untrue statements that are very misleading is the fact they don't talk about the other standard that's been around since 1893 that works very, very well, that they oppress actively. And so we're going to establish the raw milk ordinance. Instead of just having the pasteurized milk ordinance, we're going to also have its sister, the raw milk ordinance. And we'll be able to have both those kinds of products with high standards farmer training and testing. And we have the technology to do it. It's fantastic. So that's how it kind of emerged. And I am tremendously privileged to be in contact with RFK now. And he has asked me to go to Washington, D.C. and work with him and Dr. Marty McAfee, who will be chief of the FDA, the commission of the FDA, and also Jay over at the NIH, to actually develop the standards and create the team to actually have a positive pathway forward that's very constructive for raw milk for America. I've already submitted an 8-page proposal to them because they didn't have a proposal. They didn't understand how to produce raw milk, and I do. So they asked me for the vision, and I gave it to them. And now they're sharing that vision, saying, this is brilliant, let's do it. So I'm really excited that here in the coming weeks, I'll be actually engaging directly with educating them and informing them and understanding and coalescing together the whole thing to make it happen at the FDA. So extremely exciting times that I never envisioned in my wildest dreams I would ever have the opportunity to do. And here it sits before us. And I'm really excited. We have the data from all the farmers that have been trained, the Raw Milk Institute, the standards we created there, as well as my own experience producing 100,000 gallons of milk a week that's sold into stores in California and consumed by over 150,000 people that are passionately and can't get enough raw milk for their families and kids. And the one thing I have that are wounds in my heart are the fact that when I was a paramedic, 10 adult kids a day die from asthma every day in America. 10! And that's acceptable. That is not acceptable. Kids that drink raw milk, their asthma gets better or goes away. I know that because I know all the kids throughout our state that have been consuming raw milk that used to be asthmatics that are now running track. So it's extremely exciting to see those wounds I had as a paramedic, watching kids try to die, and I was intubating and giving epinephrine and holding their parents as they cried over me doing CPR on their child, now can be soothed by the fact that we're actually going about taking care of it as a solution going forward. Very, very exciting times.
The healing power of raw milk, I mean, it really, I see it and I use it, and I know that it's kind of swinging the pendulum a little bit actually to the pet space. There are a couple of vets, holistic vets, who have used raw milk and nothing else to help treat and resolve chronic conditions in
Correct.
Dogs and
Yep.
cats.
Yep.
Not pasteurized, raw. And they exist on only that. There is no other food. There is no solid food. Now, I don't know if there's a certain amount based on the weight of the dog or depending on inflammatory markers or, what the exact circumstances is. It probably is slightly different depending on what that animal is presenting with. But to be able to take the first food that Mother Nature presents to us naturally and use that to heal something that was developed later in life because of other maybe environmental exposures, or maybe unfortunately you just didn't hit the genetic jackpot. And to watch that be able to heal these animals that would otherwise probably die or have very poor quality of life and over-medicated is astounding to me.
It is.
What you're telling me and how your work with the your nonprofit and your advocation, and now to be able to go to Washington and advocate, I could almost cry. It's a dream.
Yeah.
I hope that this opens doors for others. The pet space needs that advocacy so badly. I mean, it is just terrifying. And this gives me hope, it gives me hope.
There is a bridge of peace. There is a bridge of peace with the FDA, USDA. There is a bridge of peace. The 2025 dietary standards outline guidelines that the USDA actually has up. Do you know what's in the top left-hand corner, even above USDA, that's a picture there? You know what it is?
No.
A mom breastfeeding her child.
Good.
I said to myself, my God, the truth is on the front page, top left-hand corner in full color. And so when I speak to those that are resistant to raw milk, I say, my friends, let's just relax for a minute. Take a deep breath. Nobody in this room disagrees that breastfeeding isn't fantastic for infants and small children. Nobody in this room. Everywhere the policies say, please, if you can, breastfeed your babies because of all these things we talk about. The bioactives, this, that, and the other thing. SAT scores, asthma, you name it. It goes on and on and on. Fewer colds, fewer allergies. That is what we're talking about here today. What we're doing is just shifting from a species called humans over to a cow, a goat, a sheep. And when we do that, the same things are 99% apply. They don't exactly apply because the antibodies are a little different. And qualitatively, they're almost the same. Quantitatively, they're different. In other words, the fat levels are different, but the fat almost exactly the same. We know that from the International Genomics Consortium. So the bottom line is the bridge is literally the fact that we don't have a dispute on one mammal. Why should we have a dispute on another mammal? The question has to do with, can we make it safe enough for modern humans that have a compromised immune system? And that takes some technology and some knowledge about food safety, sanitation, and health of cows and environmental stuff. We got that one figured out. We really do. 99% we got it figured out. We'll even do better when we're supported instead of being constantly criticized and suppressed. If we have some grant money and we don't have to be pioneers anymore, but we're actually accepted and we're given support from NIH for grants to do studies, we can refine these skills and make them really better, cheaper, faster, and everything else. So a lot of promise. From RFK, a lot of really good promise in making our healthcare system more efficient and less costly, so that we can actually go about increasing quality of life for everyone. Because one of the things I have a major problem with is the fact that the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act says, thou shalt not ever make a claim on food that it can heal. I think that's insane. Because how is anybody ever going to get the knowledge to understand that food matters? Food matters.
Food is medicine.
Yes.
It's the first medicine. Think of people literally foraging in the forest, in the hills, digging up roots, and then using them to heal and cure ailments.
Yes.
Willow bark
Yes.
is a pain reliever.
Aspirin.
You take the bark off the willow tree, you scrape off the inner cambium, you put it in some water, you boil the water, and you drink it. Now, it tastes bitter as shit. It's disgusting. But it helps with headaches. It helps with inflammation. What you can't say that that's healing?
No, it's acetyl
What do we
salicylic
take
acid.
that has willow bark?
It's
Aspirin.
ASA. Yeah, it's aspirin. That's exactly correct.
It's aspirin.
It's exactly
It's
correct.
like, what do you mean I can't? Ugh, it drives me bonkers.
But when
bonkers,
you say
Mark.
the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act says only drugs cure, and if you cannot present on your website anywhere we're selling raw milk, any of the studies from Europe that we've talked about, the Parsifal study, the Gabriella study, other studies that show that children that drink raw milk have less asthma, allergies, flu, and colds, you cannot put that on your website, even though it's on the NIH PubMed. You can't put it there. That, in my opinion, is a crime. A crime.
Yep.
Because what you're doing is further perpetuating illness and chronic disease for money for the pharmaceuticals. That crap is going to stop now.
I hope so. I really hope so. I mean,
that's where I put
Hippocrates
my body
said
down.
it hundreds of years ago.
Yeah.
He knew. Hippocrates knew. He said food is medicine. Let medicine be thy food and food be thy medicine. Now here we are hundreds of years later saying,
all
"No,
disease
no, no."
begins, all disease begins in the gut and do no harm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can be a little passionate because we have some deeper feelings about this. I'll tell you, that's what's driving this entire movement. It's, in fact, we deeply believe this because we know it to be true.
So, all right. So let's talk about. Well, I'm so sick of even saying it. But let's talk about the bird flu. So, H5N1. And now, people, I have an article. If you want to read my article, it's at rawpodventures.com/blog. Okay, and it's called "Bird is the Word." And I didn't even want to put bird flu in the title of the article because social media has been suppressing it if you say that. But so we're talking about H5N1, which is the avian influenza, and there's a couple different genotypes. So the D1 genotype is kind of the virus that's been isolated in poultry, wild birds. Okay. And then the B3 genotype is the one that they've been talking about for like dairy cows and some human cases, some poultry. And now the big discussion or the big I mean, I really kind of call it fear-mongering, is talking about how they're really trying to turn it to the raw industry and say like, oh, here's yet another reason not to feed raw food. It's going to kill your pet. You're going to give them bird flu. Raw milk has bird flu. Raw this, raw that. Don't do it. Your animals are going to die. I think it's completely ridiculous. I'm still feeding my pets raw food. They're amazing. I'm drinking raw milk. They're drinking raw milk. How do I put this? It gives me deja vu to other recent events. And I'm kind of afraid of what's going to come of it. But I don't want to go into like a conspiracy hole. I want to hear from you about like the bird flu and kind of milk safety and how that can affect the cattle population. Can you speak to that for us? Because I've got some really scared pet parents who want to hear it from someone who's educated.
This is fear-mongering at its most refined art. And I say that from a place of deep science. I've emerged in this since March of 2024. I went to all the videos, I went to all the Zoom calls, FDA, USDA, state of California veterinarian, because I saw it coming. It started in Texas, went up to the Midwest, and then some cows were traded with Idaho back to California. It came to a neighbor's dairy 4 miles from us. And we got it ourselves in late November. And it's one of those things where it may have killed a cow here and there once in a while, but bottom line is the cows became immune. And over the course of about 4 or 5 weeks, it passed through the herd, and now the cows have antibodies, and life goes on, just like COVID. But here's the thing.
Just like anything, any respiratory virus, right? You're exposed, you develop antibodies, and then your body remembers so that if you're exposed again, you can fight it off faster and more efficiently. That's how we work. That's how jabs work, right? Yep.
That's how vaccination works, and that's how we work. However, this is the natural gut microbiome system that we have going on here in terms of the natural immunity. And if you look at the European studies, and I won't deviate too much from the subject, I'll get back to it, but it's really important to understand this. The children that drank raw milk in Europe had a resistance and an adaptive resilience to the next virus that came on every year. They didn't have the flu every year when they were drinking raw milk. Remember when you take the jab, you take the flu vaccine, maybe 25 to 30% of the time it has some effect. The rest of it, it's like, no. And you almost always get sick from it anyway because it's got other things in it that aren't supposed to be there. But the bottom line is the kids didn't have vaccinations in Europe. The thousands of them didn't get sick, or if they did, it was very mild and quick, where they were drinking raw milk. And that meant that their immune systems were adaptive and resilient to the next threat, the future threat, not the one last year, but the future one coming from the local raw milk they were consuming. So, to make a long story short here, the bottom line is on bird flu, there's not been one single case, and I don't exaggerate. I've asked the FDA, USDA, CDFA, CDC, and I've talked to all of them repeatedly. Not one single case of foodborne bird flu causing human illness. None in raw milk, none in raw cheeses, none anywhere. It is a respiratory disease, and it is dose dependent. So, on humans, no cases whatsoever. There's been one case, a person died down in Louisiana, had a backyard flock. They had immune compromised themselves. They were 65 years old, and they eventually died. Tragedy, that's what happens. But that's what happened. It was not raw milk. Now, there have been some cats that have gotten sick, and a few have died from high doses of H5N1. But here's the thing. A big study just came out literally 6 to 8 weeks ago that showed that it was dose dependent. In other words, low doses in healthy cats did not cause disease, did not cause a lot of illness. But high doses in compromised cats could. And I often think about city cats versus country cats, because all of our cats on the farm have been drinking the heck out of this milk all through this period, no problem at all. But the cats that have immunocompromise and don't have the gut microbiome development because they're eating cat food versus raw foods, it's just like humans. Yeah. So cats may be a little different too, because they may be inhaling some of this into their lungs where they're not, they lap up the milk. It's different the way that they actually consume it. So we don't inhale raw milk. We drink raw milk. It doesn't get into our respiratory tract. And even if it did, from what we understand, it wouldn't cause illness because it's an encapsulated influenza A type virus, and encapsulated viruses don't have the ability to actually cause tissue disease. So, or transfer through an infectious process into tissues. So, I believe strongly, starting in March of 2024, if you look at MSN on TV, MSN on the social platforms, their news always led with more bad news about raw milk and H5N1. And it will always say raw milk, H5N1, raw milk every day for 200 days it happened. And then in the article it said, the professional think it's still a low risk, no illnesses, but don't ever drink raw milk because of pathogens. E. coli at 1.7 nothing to do with bird flu. It was all about other things. So it was literally, listen to this, the newest convenient platform to go after raw milk, even though there was nothing underneath it. And that is the facts. I've asked the FDA repeatedly in emails, can you please give me the risk analysis showing any illness whatsoever from humans in raw milk and H5N1? They have none. They said, oh, we're just concerned. I said, I don't care about your concerns. I care about science. Show me some science. I'll show you my science. Meta-analysis shows that you can't get sick from H5N1 in food. It doesn't work that way. But they were saying, we're just concerned it may mutate. I said, it absolutely will mutate. Viruses always mutate. They always change. They're looking for a new next host to suckle on, right? They're commensal. They go try to find a mutualistic partner out there to latch on to, because they're just a genetic piece of information that's always changing and morphing. They have from the beginning of all time. That's what they do. But the question we have is...
And they don't want to kill you.
No, they don't.
They want to keep you. They want to keep you alive. If you die, they die.
Exactly. My whole point is, are you adaptive and are you resilient? And the point is, when you drink raw milk and eat these wonderful foods we're talking about, you are adaptive and you are resilient. You may get a little bit of be down for a day or two, but that's the process by which you build the antibodies to become protected. And the 65 farm workers that did get H5N1 with pink eye, which is conjunctivitis, it was not from consumption of raw milk. It was from putting a tube down the cow's throat to actually give them water to hydrate them, because during this process where the most sick cows can actually become very dehydrated, you get mucus from their nose and your eye. And those people all have immunity. When the CDC went out and tested these farm workers, they found that they had antibodies to H5N1, but they did not become sick. They had H5N1 in their eye, which was causing conjunctivitis, which resolved with no other illness other than conjunctivitis in 3 to 4 days. So this is the biggest BS that ever walked the earth, and it's all about pharmaceuticals. And I'll tell you why I say that. In August of this last summer, Moderna got $176 million from HHS, from the FDA, to create a vaccine for humans. Do you know what their stock value was in 2020? $452. Do you know what the stock price was in August? $38. They were going freaking bankrupt because they didn't have a crisis to fix with a new vaccination. So beat the drum on MSN to create a new crisis through H5N1 that didn't freaking exist, so we don't go bankrupt as a pharmaceutical company. So it was all about the FDA supporting Big Pharma. $500 million was just given to a pharmaceutical company just literally a month ago for H5N1 vaccination. So you can see that pharmaceuticals love this crisis because it's a way to make money when they're going bankrupt because of the fact that they don't have a crisis to fix. So there you go. All about the money.
I see them pushing the vaccines for it. They're pushing it for people. They're pushing it for pets. And one thing about cats, like specifically for people to know if they haven't read my article, is I think part of the reason why our kitties are getting more sick from this is because they happen to have more receptors in the lungs that this virus attaches to compared to people or dogs. And so it for cats, because of the location of their receptors, it kind of makes it more virulent as opposed to being more like in, the GI tract. So, but again, the cats that did die, and one single animal getting sick or passing away makes my heart break. But they were outside, they were barn cats, they were exposed to poultry, and for one, the testing was terrible. They broke protocol, they broke standards, they used an open container. I mean, it was bad. And then subsequently, we found out that a recall that was done with suspicion for it didn't test positive for it. It was a recall for something else. But like jumping the gun and causing the fear just made people spiral. And consumption of milk is not the problem. So
Sure.
it's the outside factors. It's spread through saliva and through feces.
You remember during COVID when mothers got COVID, and what did the CDC say? They said continue breastfeeding your babies if you have COVID because it protects them. You don't give
gives them
COVID to the
antibodies.
baby, you give the antibodies to the baby. The same kind of thing happens with raw milk and other mammals as well. Maybe not as direct, but indirectly, you're still getting antibodies. So the bottom line for me, the bioactives, the antibodies, that whole mother-baby linkage, that whole mammalian evolution thing is a that treasure trove of Mother Nature's blueprints of how we function. And so if we can really capitalize on that, especially this time now where pharmaceuticals have just running crazy on our pharmaceutical budgets, and people are wanting to know the truth and are fed up with getting sick. Raw milk is a phenomenal hinge point for that. It really, really is, because the blueprints of life are there. And the one thing about raw milk that's really wonderful is once you get somebody on raw milk and they start talking about it and start doing it and start experiencing it, they tell somebody else because they are excited about their bowel movements, about their skin clearing up, about eczema resolving, about their asthma getting better, allergies getting better. Their kids don't get sick when everybody else in daycare does. I mean, the truth comes forward, and that propagates it even more. But we need to make sure it's done in a way that's pathogen-free, and now we have testing technology that allows us to do that. So thank you, Steve Jobs, and thank you all those modern technology people that have been able to really advances in technology, because now we can engage those into the blueprints of life. We don't consume that technology. What we're doing is using the technology to validate and verify and double check that the food we are eating, which is unprocessed and completely whole, will not make the sickest of us sick. Because right now, most people that live on a farm don't get sick from E. coli, O157H, Salmonella, or Campylobacter, or anything. They don't, because they have immunity. They have a diversity of bacteria, diversity of antibodies, diversity of protection. But those that have been on multiple rounds of antibiotics, living in the city, don't have that farm type environment, could get sick. But the people in the city are the people that need it most. So what we've got to do is on the farm do a really good job of making this milk in a way that does not have E. coli, doesn't have salmonella, so that people in the city, when they're recovering their gut microbiome, don't have exposure to pathogens. And that's the secret that we're going to be taking to RFK with standards and policy and training.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. So tell me about, now I know that you recently developed some pet products. I would love for you to tell me about that. I personally, in my own home, I drink your milk. I actually used it to make a matcha latte this morning. I have the raw cheese. I bring it every night when I go to work, and I have it as a snack during the day. I just drink the kefir straight out of the bottle. I use the cream to make butter. So I use all of them. But the pet products were new for me, I saw on your website. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, we were sued by the FDA back in 2010 because we didn't understand the proper labeling of pet foods for shipment across state lines. And the FDA wasn't willing to help us. So we got a lot of trouble. But about 5 years ago, we got complete approval for a line of pet food products that have specialized labeling intended for human consumption. Now, interesting thing to note is I cannot come out and say that this is good for human consumption because it's labeled for pets. But I will tell you, honest to goodness, straight up, it's exactly the same products we sell in California with a different label on it. Exactly the same. No difference whatsoever. Same container, same cap, same label. Everything, except it has a different label that says for pet food consumption to satisfy the FDA. So influencers will say, I drink this product in California with a human label, but I bring the product home, or I get the product where I am, wherever I am in the United States, as a pet food product, and they consume it. And they have their cats consume it as well. I can't officially come out there because that would be misbranding. However, people are doing that.
Right.
Now, the good thing is we produce those products under the exact same protocol. In fact, the FDA required that they meet and exceed human consumption standards for pet foods. So the FDA was in the room when we talked about it. They said, we know people are going to drink this stuff, so let's make sure it's human. We did. We have a Thermo Fisher lab here. It's a Quant 5 studio that does all the pathogens every day, every batch for E. coli, 157H7, Campylobacter, Salmonella, and Listeria. Every one of them gets it, everyone. So we're on it.
Awesome.
And that's where we haven't had a problem with it. And it's been sold nationally. Right now, it's actually bird flu shut us down nationally because we couldn't supply any milk for our creamery for 7 weeks. But it's coming back in the next 30 days or so, and you'll see the products nationally for pet food. But those will be bird flu free, with antibodies from bird flu, by the way. there'll be antibodies there, which is very wonderful. But then there will also be tested and everything. So it's an interesting backflip we're doing. I imagine, having spoken with the RFK team, that one of the things they're going to be doing is taking down the interstate ban on transfer and sale of raw milk. So the ban has been around since 1987. And if a farmer embraces the raw milk ordinance standards and does the testing and all the things they got to do, then I believe that the interstate CFR 1240.61 will be actually taken down, because there'll be no reason for that. And it's a political thing anyway, because it has to do with standards.
Yeah.
There will be a standard now at the FDA which will allow for interstate commerce of raw milk if the products are produced according to that standard. So there's just a tremendous amount of stuff going on right now. Remember, and you know this better than I do, that pets are suffering the same demise as their pet owners. When you think about the foods they're consuming, they never in nature ever ate a sterilized anything. They ate a rat, they ate roadkill, they had all kinds of stuff going on, and not highly processed pet food. So the cats and dogs are coming down with the same things their owners are. Crohn's disease, skin problems, allergies, you name it, they got it. In fact, that's one of the things that's interesting about our pet food products, is that we showed in veterinary models that dogs and cats would get diarrhea from pasteurized milk if they had enough of it. Mm-hmm. But they did very well on raw milk and didn't get diarrhea. Explosive diarrhea, by the way. Yeah. So it's interesting that their gastrointestinal tract needs that bacteria in order to create the lactase. The lactobacillus bacteria creates lactase. That lactase then helps digest lactose sugar. So it's interesting. The biodiversity of bacteria in our gut is the foundation of our immune system, is the ability to resist infection and fight chronic disease. The bandwidth is critical in terms of genomics. When you think about the Human Genome Project, and 95%, 98% bacterial and viral genetics in our body, not even human from mom and dad. The 23,000 genes are actually a very small, it's the hardware that makes us look the way we do. But it is not what runs us in terms of our genomics shared at the cellular level. So, biodiversity of good bacteria and the food that feeds it. If you're eating foods that are preservatives, those preservatives kill bacteria, because that's what preservatives do, is extend shelf life and can give a damn about gut life. So antibiotics, preservatives in the food will kill off the diversity. You need to have the diversity, which would be raw milk, and unprocessed whole foods would have that diversity of good bacteria. Highly processed foods do not have biodiversity. They have monocultures, or they've got nothing. They're dead. So a lot of work to do here to bring back America's health, that's for sure.
Man, you're speaking my language, and you're absolutely correct. Our pets are suffering just like we are. But for them, it seems to be happening at a more rapid rate. And I think it's because they're so exposed in a smaller package, right? They're as exposed if we are, if not more. Because if you think about the person, let's say, I'll give you an analogy. Let's say I saddle up my dog and we go for a walk down the street. And we decide to walk at a park where they just sprayed some Roundup. Well, at least I'm wearing sneakers. My dog is not. Right. So I go home, I take my sneakers off in the garage, I go inside. I might have had some exposure. Now my dog has it on his paws. He walks around the floor. He licks and ingests it. What is that doing to him? Did you know the average age of golden retrievers used to be 17 years old? 17 years before death in the 90s. Do you want to take a guess what it is now?
I can't even imagine.
Study in 2022.
What is it?
9.
Oh, that's horrible.
9. That's half. Half. I mean, and 1 out of 2 dogs are going to be diagnosed with cancer by the age of 10. So we're killing ourselves.
Canary in the mine shaft. It really is.
This is a way that we can bolster our immune system, give ourselves a good foundation to set us up for health, and to also set us up to be able to effectively combat disease and illness when it inevitably happens, because you will be exposed. It's how life works. And you want to just make sure that you have the pillars of health and you have optimized yourself enough so that when you do get exposed to something, your immune system is on point. And that's what these products do. And I will continue to use them. And I hope that they can do it across state lines soon, because you can't sell in New York, and I'm moving back home in about 6 months.
You're going to move to New York?
I'm going to need you to ship to me.
Well, Kara, I think I should be inviting you to be on the Raw Milk Ordinance team as an advisor to assist on this with your nurse practitioner and your naturopathic approach and all this stuff. You'll be a great voice to be on the team, I'll tell you that. And I think you'd be fantastic.
God, I would love to help out with this because it is so important. We cannot overstate the importance of returning to nature and just eating the way nature intends it. But yes. I don't know how this is possible, but it's already been 59 minutes. It feels like it's been 59 seconds. So we got to wrap things up. But Mark, thank you. This was amazing. I feel like, I don't know how you have so much knowledge crammed into your brain, but I'm just trying to shove it all between my ears and hope that it sticks.
Well, when I go to these International Milk Genomics Consortium conferences for the last 12 years, I'm the only farmer in the room. I've got the pre-med background. I've got the passion to want to learn because I realize that people are suffering terribly. And yeah. I think that, we have a saying, we don't ever sell raw milk, we teach raw milk. And so when you teach the immune system and you understand the gut microbiome, you understand what nourishes it, what destroys it, and that is the seat of your immune system, the seat of your gastrointestinal protection system, you really become very passionate. You feel with great purpose. And when you feel great purpose, my God, that's the highest karma points you can get. And I thank you so much for bringing me on here today and talking about this. And I love your heart and where you're going and where you're going to be helping a lot of people. So good job.
Thank you so much. All right, everybody, have an awesome day and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening. Please remember that you, yes, you, are the driving force that helps keep small businesses and platforms like mine running. So if you liked what you heard, please like, share, and most importantly, rate this podcast. It's the only way we can reach more people and spread the word about natural health. None of the conditions discussed or recommendations given are meant to replace the advice of your health provider. So if you have concerns about yourself or your pets, please confer with a human or animal health practitioner. Have a super fantastic day, and I'll see you next week.